Better do that right. Oh. And we should try to have this one reach all the way over. I just realized this not. Huh? How that's supposed to work?
The idea of recording is we get some commitments from Lars that we cannot forget.
Yeah, I just learned that we're recording this, so I'm busily deleting slides here. So did I manage to break anything? I think that something is not on because it's saying here that we're presenting. There? Oh, no. Is it seeing anything?
Se om jeg ser noget imens.
Oh well. Every time it does that, I think it's me doing something, but it isn't. So you say you have the signal?
Yeah.
All right. I thought you tested this.
Jeg har også signal.
You have the signal, okay.
So this was the introduction.
Yeah, this was the introduction. Busily moving on. Nu kom den der.
Jeg prøver at komme på den og se om det er noget.
Otherwise fetch René's mini projector.
Ja. Er den tændt her? Den er rød, den er tændt ikke?
Det skulle virke.
It ought to work, you think? And the projectors are on, but they're getting the wrong feed. They're getting the camera feeds.
Skal vi ringe efter en mand?
Yeah. Maybe someone can hear it. I can maybe have done something.
Is he here?
Yeah.
Okay. Coffee break.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe we could use the opportunity to go quickly around the table.
Yeah, let's do that.
So we know.
Keep our optical and IP network running.
Hello, my name is Kostas Stamos. I'm working in the team of Brian and Tanguy, mainly developing Autobahn software, Autobahn program.
Okay, I'm Tomek Szewczyk from PSNC. I was responsible for defining the OD service and for implementation of the service in Kernel network.
I'm Alex Shivania. I also work at PSNC. I work with Tanguy and Brian on the Autobahn things. And I'm also involved in the standardization group of the NSI protocol.
Alim Pastrama, Nordinet, NOC. We run the network and we help out our customers with bandwidth on demand.
Good morning everyone, I'm Trupti Kulkarni. I work with Dante. I manage the Xeon instance of Autobahn and I'm also a developer of CMO with Hub.
Hello, I'm Sebastiano Buscaglione. I work for Dante. I'm part of the network operation team and I'm looking after the bandwidth on demand hinge and the operation team.
Tanguy, and I think I know everyone here.
Almost goes, same goes for me. I'm Brian Mortensen. I'm the activity leader at S3. So currently working with the domain VPN and bandwidth on demand. And then I have a few other open core projects that I'm seeing after. But that's basically it.
I'm Jerry Sobieski. I'm with Nordnet. I work in the NSI working group quite heavily, and I'm also going to be using a lot of this for SA2, the testbed service. So this is a lot of overlap.
I'm Henrik Tostrup Jensen. I work for Nordnet as a software developer. I'm working with the NSI standardization group and do work on a tool called OpenNSA as well.
My name is Hans Kompert. I'm the ServNet. I'm responsible for the technical details of our bandwidth portfolio, amongst other things.
I'm Peter Hinrich, also with ServNet. I'm Community Manager Science and I'm team leader of a multidisciplinary team dedicated to the development and use of the bandwidth on demand service.
Alexander van Heel from ServNet, product manager for fixed networking services of ServNet, so also for bandwidth on demand.
Remco Poortgraaf van Leyen, also from ServNet, team lead for the collaboration infrastructure development and innovation team. So I'm here mainly for the AI section in tomorrow.
Hi, my name is Bettina Kahl. I'm working for DFM and I'm working with Autobahn.
So how is it going with the slide?
Slides are fine.
Somebody managed to destroy everything.
Very interesting slides.
Yeah.
Since I have brain trust in the video, audio video equipment is collected up there, so I rest my case.
With all the playing around with projector stuff, completely managed to confuse my Mac, which is running the absolute latest and greatest versions of everything, which your phone is completely broken. And, I'm just happy I don't have to make a living working with IT. This guy has to. Me?
That was probably the NSA backdoor that they installed.
Just tapping off everything they can.
Yeah, that's right.
Hvad skal I have en ny MacBook og bøger fra?
Nu prøver vi genstart. Aftrækket af genstart.
We can actually, in the meantime, we can explain that for reference, we record the meeting, and therefore, when you speak, you need a microphone, like the one Lars is wearing, and from the audience, it's best if you have an interesting question to take the microphone. If it's just a comment, no. But it's also better for the people who are like following the meeting remotely. And I should have said that with the microphone.
I know it's not that I'll start watching as well, but just I'm not keyboard. Yes.
We played around with screen settings. Alright, we need another Mac.
Do you online?
Jeg har en ekstra.
Men der er ikke PowerPoint på.
Er der ikke?
Jeg har PowerPoint.
Okay. Fantastic, I don't know what happened.
I just needed to turn it a bit.
The threat was being replaced.
Yeah, I should have done that a long time ago. Yeah, and now he left the room.
Okay.
This thing is simply starting all kinds of crap.
We want you to stay, Eric.
It really wants you to stay. All right. I do believe we actually already placed orders for new laptops, so you just watch it. All right. Sorry about that. I was meant to. I'm Lars Fischer. I'm the CTO of Nordinet. Eric is standing there watching the thing. He's our video guy, and he's making. We might also be replacing all the video gear. So I was going to make an introduction. Tanguy asked me to welcome all of you guys and show you everything Nordinet can do and how great we are with technology. I think I've done that already, so I can skip this. I also wanted to welcome you to Copenhagen. I had actually hoped we would be able to prepare a little snow for you, but not quite. We have control over lots of stuff, the infrastructure, but that part we are failing yet. But I hope you'll have a good time in Copenhagen anyway. It's a great city. For those of you who were a little sleepy when you got on the plane this morning, this is where you've landed. The very far northwestern part of the continent. And some of it is actually on this other continent, the other side of the Atlantic. It's one of the things that is peculiar to Nordinet of the European NREN that we are not just a European NREN, we also cover areas that are actually part of the North Atlantic or part of even the North American continent. So we have responsibility for stuff that is out there in the water, and it comes with some other challenges. I know there are a couple of other European NRENs that have similar situations, have islands in nice places where they want to go and install routers. We don't have quite the same situations. People don't fight to get to be the guy who go there and go to the beach and stuff. But anyway, we have to deal with that. Nordinet is the network for the 5 Nordic countries. We've chosen in Xi'an and in lots of other collaborations to be 5 countries together. We do that because we have lots of similar cultures, similar languages. Danish and Finnish is so similar that is nearly indistinguishable. But we are 5 separate countries and 3 autonomous regions, and we do span 8 time zones and have 9 official languages. But we like to work together. We've done it for a long time. We used to do it for 1,000 years, waging wars with each other. It didn't work very well, so now we do it with Nordinet. Despite being a very large area, and being, one of the top 10 economies in the world together, we're only 25 million people, so it's sparsely populated. Each of the countries have their own NREN. So Nordinet does not do connections of universities or have users, and Nordinet doesn't really do AAI because we don't have any users to manage identities for and things like that. All of that we leave to the NRENs in the countries. So here in Denmark there is an NREN called Dike, where Tanguy actually works. There's an NREN on Iceland, and so on and so forth, and each of them have the responsibility of connecting all the institution and deploying for some of them very large fiber networks, for some of them very small fiber networks in their respective countries. But we still, when we go into Xi'an, we do it together with this company called Nordnet. Nordnet is owned, it's actually an incorporated company that is owned by each of the NRENs in the 5 countries, or each of the, whoever owns the NRENs in those 5 countries. So there are 5 shareholders in Nordnet that each hold 1/5 of the shares, and they each get to send a guy to the shareholders meeting and elect a member of the board and all of that. And they get to tell us, and only they get to tell us what to do. And one of the things they tell us to do is to have exactly 5 customers, which is the NRENs in those 5 countries. We don't serve anybody else. Any university come and want a BOD or a 100 gig or anything else, we tell them, sure, you can have that. You talk to your local NREN and they'll do it for you. And they might ask us to help them do it. Another thing that's peculiar about Nordnet is that I know that there are some people that tell you size doesn't matter. It's not true. It does. The Nordic, these 2 maps are to scale, right? The Nordic countries are big. There's a university here in a town called Tromsø. Tromsø is not a small town. It's a real town with industry and a university and an opera house, a very large high-performance computing center, and you know, all of that. And so they expect up there to have all the facilities you have with a modern town, like a major NREN with capabilities, you know, to do 10 gigs, 100 gigs, and what have you. And the distance from where we are in this room to Tromsø is a longer flight to get there than to get to Malaga, which is down here, right? These are big countries. And this is not the northern tip of Norway. The northern tip of Norway is here, but then there's a Norwegian island up here, 700 kilometers towards the North Pole. And there are towns there. There's a university there. There are fiber, 2 sets of dark fiber going up there. We have some challenges in deploying fiber up there. We have dark fiber connections between the countries up there. There are fiber along the north coast. And you might think, why are you doing that? Fiber to the reindeer. But it turns out that we have all these crazy-ass researchers who want to go and put their radio telescopes in Spitsbergen, who want to go in here in the tundra and buy equipment to put lots and lots of energy into the upper atmosphere to energize the ionosphere, because then they can study, do atmospheric research, whatever it is, and then they take down their data there up there and say, can we have a 10 gig from, you know, here, where the really is very, very cold, and even the reindeer think it's a bad idea to go out there. So that means we have some other challenges in doing networking in the Nordic countries. We also have, you know, islands out in the middle of the Atlantic and stuff like that. Challenges that you may not have if you're from a country that you think is a big country like France, but isn't really a big country. Despite the fact that we have only half the population of the UK, of course, so we don't have the challenges of having enormous sites that lead lots of data. We mostly have the challenge of having enormous distances. Nordnet and the Nordic NRENs have always been a strong global partner in networking. We work with the Americans in bringing IP to Europe. We've also been a strong partner in Xiang as long as we've had Xiang, or as long as we've had Time 34 or whatever it was called back 15 years ago. We are the 3rd largest partner in GN3+, and we were in GN3. We commit a lot of man hours to it. It doesn't mean we do everything the Xiang way. We like to be rebellious once in a while, but we absolutely firmly believe that we need a very, very strong pan-European infrastructure. We believe in that because we believe that when these researchers up there in Tromsø in the northern Norway wants to collaborate with somebody in Malta, it's our task to make sure they can get superior data down there. They can get to Greece, they can get to wherever they want to go, they can collaborate with people in Vietnam, they can work with anybody. So we have to make sure we support the creation of a pan-European and global infrastructure that supports research. That's part of Nordnet's mission, that's why we're here. So working with Xiang, working with European projects, it's very, very important to us, and it's very important that these European projects succeed. So that's why there are a bunch of Nordnet people in this room. But we like to build our own networks. Of course, we have a dark fiber network connecting the countries. This map doesn't show all the fiber network going into all the countries because, as I said, they have their NRENs of their own and they take care of all of that. Nordnet just interconnects the capitals and well, then we have decided to have a bit of international networking of our own. We have a pub in Hamburg, we have a pub in Amsterdam, we have a pub in London. Some of the fiber here is currently being deployed, other stuff is already in place. We have an interconnection with the Polish, which we're very happy about, an interconnection with Surfnet that we're very happy about, and even have a dark fiber interconnection with Russia. And we have some connectivity going into the North Atlantic. So we have this network that connects to Iceland, of course, that connects to North America, and even in North America we have a network that connects to different cities over there. And we do that because for two reasons. Firstly, we need to get rid of all our commercial upstream traffic, so we want to have a peering fabric, and we have a very strong peering fabric, and we are always extending it, and we offer it as a service to some other networks. Surfnet is using that, PSNC is using that, other countries are welcome to. We're working with Xiang to make it a pan-European service. We also do it because we have researchers in the Nordic countries, or we have universities who tell us we want to have agreements with Box or with Adobe Connect or with whatever cloud providers are the current fancy, and we want you being Nordnet, to take care of getting the connectivity all the way to the cloud providers. We don't want any middlemen. So we make sure that whatever cloud providers we work with, we meet them where they live. So we take the traffic to them. And also means that we can do stuff with the Asians and with the Americans, getting our own traffic over there. So that's our infrastructure. We use infrastructure for lots of stuff. We are here to support science and to support research. I think for Nordnet, the interest in what has now become BOD, NSI, all these fancy acronyms, really started back in the early 90s. We started doing circuit-oriented networking again. We all grew up knowing that circuit-oriented networking is a no-no, it will never work, but then we started doing it again because big science said they needed. One of the very early projects that did that was one that did VLBI, which is interconnecting radio telescopes to form a large virtual telescope. And there was an experiment to try to do VLBI in real time across an ocean, across more specifically the Atlantic. And one of the big partners in that was a telescope in Sweden and some telescopes in other places, including in North America. And there was a meeting in San Diego where we wanted to have a demo there, and Jerry will remember we worked very hard in getting that up. And we had a very fancy control plane. The control plane was more or less all these people, at least a good bunch of them. And I still remember, I still have the mailbox because the control plane was email. And I think I have 800 emails in that mailbox. And it was all of 5 1 gigs across the globe. Right? We thought it was very fantastic and advanced. But that made us realize there's a lot of power in that, because the researchers were enormously happy with the fact that they could do this stuff in real time. It also made us realize we need better control planes. This will not scale. We can't do things that way. So that led to the idea of having this open light path exchange centric networking, where you have big exchange points and then the NRENs connect to those, and then you have the control planes controlling the exchange point and controlling the NRENs, and then you can eventually come to a point where you can do dynamic provisioning. You all know this stuff because that's what you do. That's what this meeting is about. For us, that meant lots of effort put into what was called the outer goal, establishing a test bed across several continents, in effort to try to make this stitching of networks, of circuit-oriented networks, be dynamic, to be standard-based. So we took it to the OGF and made them do something called the NSI, and we wanted to be interoperable, so that lots and lots of different stakeholders using lots of different software across lots of different networks can interoperate. And the ultimate goal to make it standards-based is really to make sure that we can eventually tell the providers of equipment for us, like the Junipers and the Alcatel or whoever they are, you have to make sure you support NSI so we can just use it. We don't want to continue to have to develop the software. And it's a very good strategy. It's been very powerful. Jerry has been leading a lot of this work in the Article Working Group. There's a lot of good stuff that's been done there. And as you can see here, we went to Rio and got endorsement from the very highest places for what we've done. So I think everybody agrees now this is the way things are done. There's still things happening in the world. One of the latest things that are happening is that we have worked with transatlantic or transoceanic cable providers, in the first instance in the transatlantic providers, getting access to this stuff, which is the cable huts where the transoceanic cables come on land. We all know, all the networks, all the NRENs in Europe, the advanced ones, have their own dark fiber networks. We know that having your access to dark fiber is the way you can do really advanced stuff, and then where you can do large capacities, where you really can support research. we are seeing that some of the providers are letting us do the same thing across the oceans. At least they're letting us get access to spectrum. We believe that's a game changer, because suddenly we get to do the same thing we are doing inside Europe or inside our inlands across the ocean. Suddenly we can provision capacity as we need it. Suddenly we can have 100 gigs or 400 gigs or whatever it is when the technology becomes available. It's a game changer because we can do much more, but it's also very, very expensive, because getting out of the sea cables on your own is more than Norginet can do. It's more than small networks like Internet 2 in the US can do. Everybody needs partners to do it, so we are forming consortia. We're trying to find new ways to organize ourselves to do that. And people are suddenly getting grand ideas, right? We need to build big trunks, 100 gigs, 400 gigs between all the oceans, interconnect Africa and Australia and what have you. And if they're going to do that and have these major landing points, these are the open light path exchanges I talked about before, where these things come ashore, we need to get easy ways to provision capacity in and out of there to make sure we can share this stuff and have all the inruns connect to the same facilities. So for that to work, we are not just for fancy researchers, not just for the crazy ass stuff, but for the real production stuff, we are going to need to have bandwidth on demand. That is going to be a crucial element in this stuff. So it's even more important than it ever was that you guys get your act together and get things working quickly, because we're going to need it for this strategic element of the future of NREN interoperability. So this is very important. So I said that we've come a long way. We've done the NSI stuff. We've done the Autogo. Autobahn is being developed. So are we done? Have we done all the things we need? Well, we know how to do the transport. Right? We fixed that pretty much. MPLS or even on the optical layer. We know how to do the cross-connecting. We know how to build a network services agent to control a cross-connection point, to set up circuits. We know how to do that. We may have an idea about how to do topology exchange, but maybe not. It's sort of, or I guess we have lots of ideas of how to do topology exchange, and I guess that's the problem, isn't it? We need to agree on which one to use. Some of us have ideas of how to do performance verification end-to-end, because if we're going to do this large scale, we have to go to also verified. On the IP networks, we have perf sonar. On BOD stuff, we have, I'm not quite sure what we have, but we're going to need something. Do we have service level management? I don't think so. I don't think I want to be able to tell researchers, you have this facility where you can, in 15 milliseconds, get this much capacity in this way, and it will be there when you ask for it. And when I make that guarantee, I also want to make sure I can measure that I do it, so that when the guy complains, I can say, no, you actually got it, or all right, I screw up. We need to have policy for all these links we have. Who can actually provision links across this circuit? Here's a 100 gig across the Atlantic bought by some high energy physics guys for CERN. We need to make sure that we can put that in between our big sites and make sure that it's not suddenly being used by astronomers or whatever. So there has to be link policy management for that. We need some identity management to make sure we understand who is using all this stuff. Europe knows a lot about how to do identity management. Why don't we just have to figure out how to apply it to BOD? There's all the stuff about building real virtualized network across these infrastructures. We're only thinking about that. I know there are people who are saying they figured it all out. It's all about SDN. Yeah, sure. I also remember when it was all about ATM. Right? We still need to fix the virtualization problem. We need to have standard architectures of these exchange points that are going to be crucial. And what about security of all this stuff? Currently, I am committing major resources to two important projects, strategic projects at Norginet. One of them is called OpenNSA. The other one is called PRISM. The picking of those two names is purely by coincidence, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But I still maintain we need to do something about security. So no, we're not done yet, but we've come a long way. And for Norginet, we have now, in light of what has happened in the past year, the past 2 years, we had a very, very good Glyph meeting in Singapore earlier this fall. We saw lots of demonstrations. We saw interoperability of NSI 2.0. We saw several good pieces of software come together. We have come to the point where we believe the time has come to go from experimenting with this stuff, from building this stuff, from engineering this stuff, to putting it into service. We are committing resources now to creating a real BOD service, not as a test bed, but across our production facilities. So we're going to run it on our production MPLS infrastructure, and we're going to make sure whatever software deploy works on that. And it's going to be everywhere where our network is and interwork with everybody that we meet wherever we are. So it's going to be European, and it's going to be global interoperation. It's going to be based on NSI 2.0. That's not up for discussion. It's going to be based on our own OpenNSA software. Again, purely by coincidence, the naming. But that is not for discussion. That's what we're going to do. That's our strategy now. To make sure we pull it off, we have appointed a BOD service architect, or at least we've committed resources to have a full-time architect. I think we know who it is, but he hasn't been told yet, so I'm not naming names. We have a resource commitment for at least a man year to make sure this happens within the next 12 months, and then we are committed to, at least for the next 5 years, commit resources to maintaining and further developing this, to make sure that we get deployment wherever Nordnet networks are, that we have interoperations where we meet our partners, and to make sure that we continue to develop and maintain our OpenNSA software. And this is not just about OpenNSA, because OpenNSA is just a network services agent. It's also about all the things that are around it, all the dashboards for the NOC, all the performance monitoring, all the user end monitoring, and all of the other stuff that we're going to need for that. We're going to put major resources into doing that. So we will also be developing all the pieces that we're missing. I'm not saying topology exchange again, but the pieces that are missing. And we're targeting to have something in production on our production infrastructure within the first half of 2014. Not something big, fancy, full-blown everything, but something that we can actually work with our partners and then move on from there. And we're inviting our partners to work with us to ensure that we have interoperation from the start. We're also already talking to SurfNet about making sure we interoperate as we deploy along, and I'm sure we will also work very much with Zhang to make sure that we deploy in lockstep so that things are in sync and interoperate. And I believe if we do this in Europe, we can set the standard for how this is done, and then the rest of the world will follow. Because there are other networks out there in the global scene that we would like to see deploy this stuff as real BOD and not just as something you use for circuit stitching. They are not being very active right now, but I think if Europe takes the lead, they will follow. I'm not saying Internet 2 because they might feel bad about that, but some global partners, we need to make them follow. So that's where we're committing our resources now. And I used a lot more time, or something used a lot more time that I should have had, but thanks for listening, and have a great time in Copenhagen.
Thanks very much.
Of course, if there are questions, I'm happy to take them.